Welcome back to the Against All Odds, the Less Than 1% Chance podcast with your host, Maria Ponte, where we will hear stories of incredible people thriving against all odds. And my hope is that we can all see how life is always happening for us, even when we are the less than 1% chance. Hey, welcome back to Against All Odds, the Less Than 1% Chance podcast with your host, Maria Ponte. I am so pumped. I have an old friend because we've known each other for about 8 years or so. Her name is Danet Peterson here with us today. This mama has such an against all odds story. I cannot wait for you to hear. And I'm really, really excited for her to be able to tell her story and for you just to see the absolute resilience and all out belief and faith that can literally move mountains from this woman and the tribe that she has built. And I'm just so excited. This is also being recorded a day after her birthday. So we'll talk about her goal for her birthday. So Danet, hello, my dear.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. I'm so excited. So I'm going to let you go with this because your story is so powerful and I know that you have so much to say. And so what is your against all odds story?
So I'm going to take you back to, I guess it was about 3+ years ago. It was summer of 2020. We had all settled into the summer of COVID, right? And the pandemic and just trying to adjust to life feels a little different. We're going less places, we're doing less things. And I live in Arizona and it is hot. It's super hot here. And my kids were just like desperate to get out of town. And we all just needed a break. My family got a cabin up in northern Arizona and we decided to just last minute take the kids and just go for as many days as we could handle between my husband and I and just go with my siblings and hang out at this cabin. And it was great. It was a much needed break from the heat and from just everything we'd had going on. Yeah, I'd already had a month or so of this whole month of July had been just a crazy month medically. I had some suspicious stuff in my pelvis that my OB was checking. And there was kind of this worry and this layer of uncertainty that was already there that I was like, I just needed a break. And so we were at this cabin trip and I got the news from my OB that, hey, the scans were clear. Everything looks good. You don't have anything to worry about. And just went through the rest of the day. Everything was fine. And the next day I woke up and I couldn't see in one of my eyes. And I say I couldn't see well enough. I wear glasses, as you can see. I wear contacts and I put in my contact at the time and it didn't work. Like I thought I had dropped this thing on the ground because it was like still blurry. I could not make heads or tails of what was around me. And I was like, what the heck? So I told my family and my sister. We joke she's not allowed to speak things into existence anymore because she was like, oh my gosh, what if it's a brain tumor? And I was like, don't say that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, kid you not. That was what she said. And I love my sister. She's one of my best friends. So it's fine. But she's also just not allowed to speak anything but good things into existence anymore. But I lost vision, kind of just chalked it up to stress of everything that had been happening that summer. And I just left it for a day or so and just hoped that maybe it would come back. Fast forward a couple of days, it was not getting better. I was feeling more and more stressed by the fact that I just could not see out of this eye. And so I decided that I needed to go home. And by this time, my husband had already gone home. We lived a couple hours away from this cabin and he had already driven home and it was just me. And I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to take my kids and my baby who's already not sleeping well, and we're going to go home. And I got home. Next morning, woke up, made a call to my optometrist and just said, look, this is what happened. This is how I'm feeling, like no pain, but also like just can't see. And they were like, we need you to come in like as soon as you can. When's the soonest you can get here? And they got me in really fast. Within about maybe an hour of being there, I was being told that not only was I mega dilated, but I was also being told that I needed to head to another doctor, like immediately. There was no waiting. And this was on a Friday. And so I was just basically shuttled from one doctor to the next. And she told me like that she suspected I had a retinotere. And if it was what she thought it was, then she couldn't fix it, but she had to send me to someone who could as quickly as possible, or I would go blind, like completely in that eye.
Oh my gosh.
And that was all she knew. Like she just could see in the imaging that there was fluid, there was darkness, and she had no idea what it was other than not visible. She could not see the full health of the eye. So I get to that next office and I spend like the entire afternoon there. I'm probably there for at least 2-3 hours. And I was alone in the waiting room. And I just remember we're all wearing masks and there's social distancing and you have to fill out all of the forms saying you're not sick. And I just remember thinking to myself, okay, like retinotere, I can handle this. And just I had done to this point, we had already in our team things with the company that you partner with, like I had already done lots and lots of mindset coaching. I was working on one-on-one life coaching with Brad Bizjack. And I was just like, you know what? I can handle this. I don't know what's coming, but we can figure this out. And went into it. All of this testing finishes. The doctor comes in and again, by myself, and he says, so why do you think you're here? And I'm like, because I have a retinotere and you need to fix it. And he said, well, you do have a retinotere, but I can't fix it. And it's because there's a tumor in your eye. And I'm like, what? Yeah, it was literally just like that. And I was like, I just remember being so like, just like, I couldn't say anything. I was just stuck. And he just generally explained what he thought it was, told me, don't go on Google. And also, you have to go to another doctor next week who can take better pictures. They're going to do a more thorough round of testing, and he will officially diagnose you if it is what I think it is. Again, wouldn't really tell me exactly what he thought it was.
Because he didn't want you to Google it.
Yeah, he didn't really want me to Google it. He's like, well, I feel like I have like mixed memories about it because it feels like it was forever ago. It was only 3 years, a little bit over 3 years ago, but it still feels like ages.
Yeah.
And I remember I just went home and it was just like such a shock, right? Like, go in thinking, oh, you're just going to have a quick laser surgery. They're going to fix your retina. You're going to leave. You can see again. All things are good. No, like there's a tumor. And like at that point, I feel like when I was in that office with him, tumor did not equate cancer. Like it didn't, they didn't connect.
How old were you at the time?
I was 28.
Okay.
So it was July 31st. I was 28. And then the next week I went in for another day of probably 3-4 hours of testing, like super long tests. I mean, just every image you can think of, like looking into lights, having them take pictures of my eye, opening my eye, taking like IV medication that was going to make a contrast dye light up different ways in my eye, like just so many tests. And it all ends with this like kind of tiny little pen that has this bulbous thing on it. And they use it to ultrasound on the eye, and they numb your eye and they like hold this little pen basically that has kind of like a jelly little bulb on the end, and they use that to ultrasound on the inside of the eye. And at this point I had already had the ultrasounds done, but it was being done by a different doctor. The doctor comes in and he's like, so you have what's called ocular melanoma and we have to treat it because if we don't, you're going to die. That was generally how he and his office phrased it. Was like, well, I mean, you could just do nothing, but you're going to die if you do nothing. And I'm like, what?
Well,
so
granted,
cool.
She's got 3 kids.
Yeah. And at the time, my baby was 9 months old. So I had just had a baby like less than a year ago. And we're dealing with all kinds of things at home in our family and just different changes, shifts in dynamics and shifts in just religious and spirituality perspectives, like just lots of big things. And then we're adding this. And I'm like, okay. And so I just like that appointment was obviously rough, like to get confirmation of what I had by then Googled, like mass in the eye. Like it's pretty, there's not very many eye cancers. And the most common eye cancer is ocular melanoma.
Okay.
But ocular melanoma itself, if you Google ocular melanoma statistics, it's like a 6 in a million diagnosis. So it's literally a freak chance. There's not enough research. It's such a rare disease that like there is not a whole lot to base what causes it. They can't pinpoint anything in particular. And that's one of the things that when you get a diagnosis like this is you start looking for answers of like, did I expose myself to something? Did I have bad eye drops? Was it eyelash glue? Like, I mean, was it something that I did? Yeah. Like you absolutely go through that phase of just trying to make sense of it. Right. And so I had that diagnosis, ended up over the course of the next month changing doctors because I just didn't feel like the first doctor was a good fit. And I was slated for what's called brachytherapy. And brachytherapy is a type of surgery where they spend some time ahead of this working with a radiation oncologist who they know how to dose radiation for a tumor of any size. And they construct what's called a plaque. And it's this piece of metal that is essentially the size of a quarter. Like if you go to a theme park and you flatten a penny and they stamp the penny.
Yeah.
Think a quarter, but stamp the quarter instead of the penny and then stack 3 or 4 of them on top of each other. That's what a plaque is. It's like a super thick piece of metal. It's gold and it's curved based on CT imaging and brain MRIs to fit the shape of your eye. And then they go in surgically, they insert this plaque under the conjunctival layer, which is like the skin of the eye, and they leave it with radiation seeds on the back of it for a week. And they dose this tumor for, it can differ from person to person. Some people have a dosage of 3 days, some people have 6 or 7 days. I was 7. So I had it there for a week. And because I had little kids, I was radioactive. I was not able to
Be around
radioactive. I was not able to be around them, but it was probably one of the hardest experiences of this cancer. And by then I was learning more, right? I was learning more from my doctor. I was learning more from the internet and from Facebook groups, just about like, what is this? And what does it mean? What does this mean moving forward? And because of the size of my tumor, which for reference, the diameter of the eye on average can be roughly like 25 to 30 millimeters across. My tumor was 13.4 millimeters high.
Oh my gosh. So
and
it
it
was like
was
half
17.
of your eye.
Yeah, it literally filled about half the volume of my eyeball. And by the time I finished treatment, which that treatment, I was like my week from hell. I call it like my Horcrux week. It was not fun. It was very painful and just really hard to be super isolated because I was radioactive. And by the time I finished that and I was waiting on biopsy results, like I was starting to just have a better understanding of just how serious this could be and just how much weight this carried. And it's hard to explain to people because I had the treatment, it was over in 1 week, and it was just like, oh, so you're cancer free now, or your cancer is dying now. And it's like, well, yeah, we hope. Yeah. But also there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of unknowns here that we can't necessarily just chalk it up to, yeah, you're going to be fine. Like, we don't know that. Yeah. And so fast forward about 6 weeks, and I got a call from my medical oncologist, who I was already set up to see, because the risk of this cancer is, yes, you can go blind. Yes, you can lose sight or some level of sight, depending on the size of the tumor. But the way that it can spread is through the optic nerve. And the more that I've learned about this cancer is that the research shows us that it doesn't spread through the optic nerve after you treat it. It typically has already spread. For example, you have metastatic disease and you're given a stage 4 diagnosis because it spread to your liver 3 or 4 years after it was found in your eye. They suspect it probably was already circulating in your body even before they found it in your eye. Wow. So it's kind of like this catch-22, like there's no way to win. Like you don't get to avoid having it because they don't have a way to detect it any sooner until it's basically at stage 3, highly progressed in your eye. And so it was already, for me at least, very progressed. I got biopsy results that said I was in the highest risk category, basically that I had the largest percentage chance that it could spread. And I just remember getting those results, and it was almost like getting diagnosed over again. Like it was super traumatic feeling. It was just like, how do I I just got back up, right? I just had this hard surgery. I just had this diagnosis. How do I muster the strength to stand back up after this knocked me down? I spent probably months just off and on, just crying anytime I would look at my kids, because it was just like, it was so hard not to take those prognostics and look at it and go, I don't have a chance. And to just feel like super hopeless, because they're basically telling you, you have a 30% chance or less that you could be okay long term. And we have no way to calculate or say for sure either direction. You could lie in that 80% of people who it does spread, or you could be fine. And I guess that's like 22% chance, I think, is like a 22% chance that it won't spread, or that it won't have already spread, if we're really accurate. And then like a 70, I think the prognostics say it's like a 78% chance that if it does spread, it will spread in the first 2 to 5 years after diagnosis in the eye. So I basically spent the next couple of years really just grappling with that uncertainty, right? Because I had this high risk, but I didn't have active cancer that I had to be in treatment for. I just had this high risk of it coming back. So I had scans every 3 months. I was meeting with my oncologist every 3 months, lots of blood work, lots of just trying to figure it out, right? Trying to figure out, is there anything I can do ahead of this? If I'm going to assume that I have a high enough risk that it's worth me doing something, they call it adjuvantly, or just trying to be preventative. Proactive. Like, then what do I do and how can I do it? And so I spent some time doing various different cleanses, and I did like just clean eating vegan diet, and like just trying various different things, just trying to just sit with like what feels right to me and what is sustainable to me. I also participated in a clinical trial during 2021, basically like end of 2020 to end of 21. I was in a clinical trial flying back and forth from Philadelphia to see an oncologist out there who had a clinical trial that was basically trying to give me a 15 to 20% chance of better rate or better odds.
Better odds. Yeah.
Yeah. Just trying to give me like a little bit of a leg up,
And it's so
but also
hard.
no guarantee.
Yeah. It's so hard because I had cervical cancer and there wasn't like, I didn't do treatment. I did a surgery that removed that area of the cervix. And then, but yeah, you don't have treatment, but you're still like, oh, so
it's constantly on your mind. It doesn't matter if it's a temporary treatment. When you're given a cancer diagnosis, it doesn't just go away because the cancer's gone for a little while or it's been treated. It's constantly a part of your life.
Yeah.
And that can have pros and cons, or that can look different for everybody. Some people, that drags them down into a dump, into this ditch, and they're in the pit of despair all of the time. And it's just, woe is me, and life sucks, and I'm just going to die anyway. So why try? I'm just going to live however I want. And then you have other people who they look at it and they go, okay, I can't change this. Like, I wish I could, wouldn't have asked to be in this club, but also I can't do anything about it. All I can do is change or modify and adapt to how I respond in the future. I can pivot, I can adjust, I can just trust that this is figure outable. Like, I don't know how it's figure outable, but like, I can just kind of figure it out as I go.
And luckily we have the same mindset coach that teaches us that life is happening for us and not to us.
Like just that kind of idea. And prior to my diagnosis, like I had spent 6+ years doing professional and personal development, like reading books, listening to podcasts, participating in like group coaching, team calls, like all kinds of different things that literally, like I had someone within a few days of my initial diagnosis. There was someone who I only know him through Facebook. He actually, I believe now, is a counselor for like alcoholics. So he helps people with addiction recovery, and he is a recovered addict himself. He's had an insane story, and it's been so neat to follow and to see that unfold in the way that he has shared his story, like just authentically across social media. But he has continued to follow like my journey. And I remember one of the comments, like I had to keep a book of wins, so to speak, about as things were happening. And so when I initially got diagnosed, and during different phases of my diagnosis journey the last 3 years, I've had to keep track of what are some of the things that people have said to me that have stuck and that have felt like they really ring true. And he was one of those people that he wrote something that was essentially like, I know this is hard, but I just want you to just imagine that what if everything else that you have been going through, right? Because he's watched this unfold on my social media page, because I have shared authentically through my fitness journey, through postpartum, through a faith journey, through a miscarriage. And he's like, what if all of this, like this stuff that has led up to this, all of the growth is not just, it just didn't happen. What if all of that was to prepare you for this right now?
Oh,
and like this specific, like this fight. What if all of that was just to make you prepared and strong enough to handle this? And then to get that message like back from somebody, basically 4 days into my diagnosis, like it literally changed the trajectory of how I was able to handle this, because I could have gone either way, right? I could have just dropped off the edge and just been like, I can't do this.
Yep.
This is too hard. And so therefore I give up. Or I could have done what I did, which was essentially to the conclusion that I was going to choose to get back up. That if life knocked me down, and however it knocked me down, that I would choose to get back up, and that I would just pre-decide. I didn't know what would happen in the future. I didn't know if I was going to have cancer spread or not at this point. And I was going to go through as much as I could in this diagnosis, being as present as I could and being in the moment and just being grateful for what I have and for the life that I have. And that I would just trust that I could figure it out as I went along. And there were just lots of different things, right? Like I had Brad, my coach at the time, when I first got diagnosed, one of the things that he said to me was kind of similar. It was just like, okay, you haven't gone through cancer before, but look at all of these other things you have gone through. Use those as proof that you can handle
your book
like
of proof.
Your book of proof. Yeah. Like that you have this life book of proof of all of the hard crap you've already gone through. Use that. It doesn't matter if it aligns exactly with the cancer diagnosis, right? Like we tend to start making up rules about, oh, this is something new, right? Like when we experience something new, which I recently have experienced something new, which I'm not going to go into details about that specific thing, but in my brain, I started to make up this rule that, oh, I've never gone through anything like this before. And so therefore I don't know what to do. That was where my brain was starting to go. And I met with a current coach that I'm working with right now. And he told me, he said, I just want you to like play that back, listen to yourself say that again. And when I did, I heard it. And then I was like, that's not true. And then I was remembering like, okay, book of proof still applies. All of this other stuff that I have gone through to this point still applies to this new circumstance, right?
Yeah.
And then all of the tools, the skills, the mindsets, the resilience that I have built to this point, because I don't know if you remember the speaker that we had on a team call, but she talked about this idea that confidence is not an attribute, it's a skill. And I would argue resilience is also a skill. You can build resilience. And it is not just something that you just happen to have. It's not just, oh, you have brown hair, you have resilience. No, you build resilience by making the choice every time that something hard happens that you're going to decide that you can handle it, that you don't have to know how you can handle it. You don't have to know what is going to happen to figure it out. You just have to trust that it is figure outable, and that because you handled all the other crap that you've dealt with in the previous circumstances of your life, that this too is also figure outable. And I wish I could say it didn't take a cancer diagnosis for me to fully apply and really lean into the belief of all of these things that we've learned from books, from speakers, from podcasts, like all of the personal development and the coaches and all of the stuff that we've listened to through coaching. But this was, for me at least, this was where it all locked in, is when
it was the oh shit moment that apply all of this.
You have to apply this. It was very much like you either swim or die. So those were just kind of some of the mindsets that helped me through. So that was the first 2 years. And then we get to last summer. And last summer I was coming up on what's called the 2-year. It's like the 2-year diagnosis mark. And it's like kind of a big milestone in a couple ways for my prognostication in my biopsy, because the 2-year mark is when, insanely, it doesn't make any sense, but the 2-year mark is when that level of risk is the highest. And so I was coming up on my 2-year anniversary. I had scans coming up probably the next 4 weeks after that 2-year anniversary mark. And I just was like, literally very suddenly, like I was fine one day, or one part of the morning, I got up, I did a workout, felt great. And then by the afternoon, like I was in a work meeting and I just felt like I was going to pass out. And I was like, what the heck? So literally went to my room, laid on the floor, thought I was going to puke all night, like felt horrible. And then the whole weekend was just sick. And by the time I got to the next week, I was still having like no appetite. I felt like I'd had like a flu bug, but without a whole lot of throwing up. And it was just a crappy thing. And I had this whole, so that was 2022. So July 2022, that was the first month, like July of 2022 was the first month my children had not been sick. Like literally they were sick from December of 2021 all the way until the end of June of 2022. Like every single month they were sick. Like one of them was sick for 1 week or 2 days or 3 days. And it was just rotational, and it was like nonstop for 6 months. And it was super hard as a parent, like to have your kids be that sick and not feel like you know what to do, despite all of your knowledge around health and wellness and like the things you continue to learn. You're just like, you feel helpless. I had also had COVID earlier that year, and there was some suspicion of, okay, maybe you got COVID again. And so I took the test and it was like, nope, not that. And ended up in the ER a couple days later because I was having such intense stomach pain that like I was super worried about gallbladder attacks. Like something was up. I could just tell that something was up. But I also know my biology because I've had 12 MRIs of my liver. And so I was also very worried about the fact that I'm feeling what feels like localized pain in my liver. And that's the area for this cancer that is the highest likely organ of spread. And for me, that's the liver. The area that was the one we watched the most, is the liver. And went in, and they come in, they're like, oh, we think we see these things on your liver, and you probably need to follow up with you said you have a medical oncologist, you probably should follow up with them. They're showing me some of this stuff on and telling me how big some of these little spots are and just random history. I already have a bunch of stuff on my liver. It's called hemangiomas, and we know about it. Like my doctors, all of them know about the hemangiomas. Hemangiomas are typically something that a lot of women between the ages of like 20 and 35 develop them or have them. They're not harmful. They're basically just like little blood tissue or blood vessel pockets on the liver. Okay. And so they're not cancerous. We've already established this. They're doing an ultrasound, right, in the ER, which I know based on my history with scans, like I know an ultrasound is like the least accurate they can be. And they're telling me, we think we see some spots, and they're telling me the measurements. And I'm like, that's a hemangioma. That's a hemangioma. I'm not worried about what's on the liver. I'm worried about them coming in and telling me, oh, your labs are elevated and your liver enzymes are up. because those are something my medical oncologist does watch. And those are something that we do watch, because if they get too elevated, it's because, or historically, it can be because there is something going on. And the liver can be elevated for lots of reasons. As I came to find out, it can be elevated because you're sick, like literally just because you're sick. But I had this just horrible stomach pain, got those results, ended up calling my oncologist the next day, freaking out. And he, to his credit, he's just very good at letting me drive my own care. And he was like, do you want to wait for scans, or do you just want to do scans now? Because we can do them tomorrow. Like, we can just send you in, we'll get the scans, we'll get the results, we'll have an appointment that day, and we'll go over the results. And I was like, you know what? I think it'll make me feel better if let's just do scans now. Like, I'm already feeling that anxious feeling. Let's just get it over with. And so I do the scans and go into a telehealth appointment, and he drops the news that they have found something. And I'm just like, what? Because again, by this point, he's already talked me through the idea that, okay, the liver enzymes being elevated by this amount. Yes, they're elevated, but they're not overly concerning. To me, this looks like maybe you have a virus. Maybe you had, it's like hepatitis A or B. Like, there's various different things that can affect the liver that, and just any plain old virus can make your liver enzymes elevate. But he's like, again, this little spot that we're seeing as we're having this appointment, and he's basically telling me, we suspect there's metastatic disease, but we don't know for sure. That's like always the answer in this cancer. It's like, there's a problem, but we don't know what it is yet. And yeah, here you go. And so again, back into the frying pan, like back into limbo of just, okay, now what? And at this point, because of the location of this lesion on my liver, there was a lot of kind of background check to be done. And so we spent a couple of months comparing scans, waiting in between to see if we could just justify doing a biopsy, basically. Because they can't justify a biopsy unless they can see noticeable change. And so they're comparing the scans. They're learning that, oh, we missed it in your April or your May scans, by the way. We missed it. It was there in May of 2022. But from May to August, it's about the same size. So that's stable. Like, we can't justify biopsying something that looks like it's stable. And again, back to the drawing board of wait. And it took a couple months of just that waiting period. And in that period of time, while I was waiting, I had just locked into this idea after talking to other patients who have this cancer, who have treated it in a holistic way. Because that's back to what you said before. I'm a mom of 3 little kids. And the more that I am learning about metastatic disease and the possibilities of treatment and the clinical trials that are available to me, or may not be available to me, because there's so few of them. I think that right now, to date, there's maybe 10. And they take a handful of patients every few months. And there's definitely a lot more than 60 patients who need metastatic treatment. And I was just starting to come to this conclusion that I didn't care if it was metastatic disease. I knew I didn't want to be traveling every week. Even like, it was just one of those things where I didn't want to have to put my family through, and myself through, the stress of all the travel, all the things to deal with this. I wanted it to be as accessible and as easy on us as possible. And if that meant staying local, then that would mean staying local. Even though historically in our cancer on the Facebook world, like, there's one doctor who's like the most trusted doctor, and they're on the East Coast, and like everybody goes to see them for metastatic management. The problem is they've never kept anyone alive for longer than a few years. So like, are they really the best? Are they really the best? I don't know. I'm not really
How sure are we about this?
I'm not gonna travel every week or every month just for that. That doesn't sound great. Anyway, so I had started coming to this conclusion that I wanted to pursue something different. And that if it was metastatic disease, which, to be honest, I spent the majority of that 2 months waiting from August to September. Was it from August to September? I guess it was beginning of August. And then we had scans again right at the beginning of October, or the very, very end of September. So it was roughly 7-8 weeks. And that was supposed to be enough time for us to say, yes, if it is changing, we will see it. And if it is not, we'll just continue to watch and wait. Or we can make an attempt at a biopsy. But the problem was the biopsy, again, was super inaccessible because of the location of it in my liver. It was like super high up underneath multiple organs. It was just the type of procedure to get to it was more invasive than they wanted to do without cause and justification, which would mean seeing the lesion grow or seeing more lesions show up. And so we're basically just waiting for cancer to get worse, right?
Yeah. So that's so frustrating.
Which is super frustrating. And I couldn't live in that frustration. So I lived in denial, but I also lived in a state of it was like simultaneous denial, but also I refuse to accept that I can do nothing about this.
Yeah.
And that if this is cancer, which I caveat, don't believe it is until it's proven guilty in a lab, I believe that I have the power to do something with this, that I have the power to change something about the trajectory of my outcome. And I had to fall back on there kind of early on in my diagnosis when I had first gotten this biopsy result saying that I had a class 2 prognostication, that I had a high risk of it spreading in the first couple of years. My doctor, my eye doctor, she told me, she's an ocular oncologist, and so all she does is see patients with this cancer or similar cancers. And she's like, this number, this biopsy, it's just a number. And she said the biggest thing you have to understand is this number is not you, and that you are not a statistic. You are writing your own statistic. You are writing your own story. You are not this number, and I will never treat you like this number. And again, I get emotional thinking about that, because if she had not said that to me, then I would not have been able to fall back on that kind of belief and to latch onto that and to just hold on to that idea that, like, okay, this doctor's told me that I'm not a statistic. This doctor's told me I'm a freaking unicorn and he doesn't understand why I have cancer in the first place. We're just going to go with that. We're going to go with I'm a unicorn. I don't quite make sense, but that this is figure outable, and that I don't have to equate to what they're saying that I should. And so I went through that 2 months of waiting, had the next set of scans, got the results that it was growing again, which was in some ways super frustrating, right? Because I had just spent this last couple of months cutting carbs, cutting completely out of no sugar, like at all, not even artificial sugars, monk fruit sweeteners, like any of the kind of keto friendly sugars and things that I use now, nothing. Like I literally had no added sugar. And like just some of the things that I was learning through, I had started reading some books like the Radical Remission book by Kelly Turner. And I started reading a book called The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, which was really generally what a couple of patients that I was learning from were doing themselves. And they were multiple years into metastatic disease management. They were more stable than most people that I knew on any other active treatment. And I was like, I'm sold. I will do this. And it was at that moment, it was like, okay, like I'm going to try this, but I was not heavily working with a naturopath oncologist. I was just trying to do it myself and figure it out, and trusting that maybe it was going to help on some level. I didn't know how, but I wanted it to help. And then I got those scan results that, it was 7 millimeters. Now it's 1.1, 1.2. Like it's over a centimeter now. It's big enough for us to try for a biopsy. Let's talk about options. And I remember feeling like a mixture of, okay, like I have an answer. We have an answer of we need to do something, and that we can't just sit here and watch and wait anymore. So that's good. But also, what do we do? Because it's still in a really hard location. But the crazy thing with this cancer, usually what happens, the reason that they watch, the reason they don't just always biopsy right to begin with and treat immediately, is because historically this cancer shows up and it's one spot, and then a couple months later it's 10 or 5 or 20.
Wow.
And so it basically exponentially multiplies rapidly, like in a very short span of time. And they don't anticipate it staying one lesion for long. And so they would rather know, where are the rest? If they're going to show up, where are the rest? Can we go after, if there's going to be 5, can we go after all 5 in one go instead of trying to play whack-a-mole, right? And so there's a reason for that waiting period, but that waiting period doesn't feel any better as the patient.
It doesn't suck any less.
No, it doesn't suck any less. But I went into that appointment, got my scan results, and I still only had one spot. Like it was growing a little bit. It had doubled in size in 2 months, which is not great, but it was still very small. It was still about a centimeter, and it was alone. And that right there, while I was frustrated that it had grown, the fact that it was still alone was proof to me that something was working, that I didn't know exactly what it was. But again, it was like that book of proof. It was like, okay, something is helping. Something is working. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep diving into this modality. This modality still feels right to me. And then I started talking with a liver surgeon, and I had really just started heavily leaning into and subscribing to this idea that maybe I wanted to pursue holistic naturopathic oncology. And I wasn't entirely sure if I was going to be totally on board with the no conventional medicine at all, like some people I know, because there's some people I know who have had 0 conventional treatments, like nothing. They have refused all conventional treatment, and they're doing great and they're doing fine. But there's other people I know and that I came to learn about, because I was like, this is weird. The more people I talked to, the more that I learned that my situation of having one lesion was not normal. It was not normal at all. And it was a good thing. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was a good thing, but it was also something that I could approach in a different way. And so I ended up choosing to have a recommended surgery called a liver ablation, where we basically went in and we fried that little sucker and then basically made a little hole, golf ball size, I guess, it's 3-4 centimeters, just basically like zapping the area around it, because the suspicion is we're going to get the spot and we're going to get any of the surrounding area where its babies could be. Where it could be setting up camp and having a family and all the friends are gathering. We're going to assume that we need to expand that area. So we did that. And I remember there was some up and down with that decision to begin with too, because I had a naturopath oncologist I had started working with, and she was super against, absolutely dead set. Medicine is the devil. Like, you cannot do that. You can't do a liver ablation. And I was like, okay, I don't think I can work with this black and white thinking with you. So we're going to not do that. And I remember feeling like there was this period of limbo where I was being told, we need to biopsy. Here's your options of how we can biopsy. And then also this other oncologist telling me, don't do the biopsy, that can spread cancer, and don't do this. And all of these things, all of this, very honestly, it was very fear-based for me. I was like, I'm not a fan of you at all right now, lady. And I had to come to a place where I had a discussion with my oncologist, with my medical oncologist here in Phoenix. And he told me it was up to me. And he said we would do whatever I was most comfortable with. And if I wanted to go see another doctor in another state, another country, he would support me. But that generally he's like, you've got to make a decision. I can't make this for you. And it was kind of like there was just this switch. And I felt like with him, I was able to like really just be in the driver's seat. And I came to this realization that was where I needed to stay. It was like that I needed to be the driver of my own care, and that I needed to have doctors who were willing to let me drive that. And that if this naturopath oncologist who I started to work with, because she works with 10 other patients who have the same cancer as me, wasn't the right person for me to work with, then that was okay. That didn't mean that I couldn't still pursue the naturopath oncology route. It just meant I needed to find a different doctor. So decided to have the liver surgery. That was scheduled for mid-November. And then I had a little while of waiting. But I'm not going to lie, like when I first got the news that it was growing, yes, there were some of those things that went through my brain of, okay, like I can do something with this. And now we can take some action. And then the idea of making a decision and having the making the decision part, even if I potentially changed my mind, it was just that idea that I just needed to make a choice and sit with that choice for a little while, that made it possible to move forward and not feel quite as stressed or scared. Honestly, most of the fear that I've ever experienced has come when I'm just stuck in an uncertain place. It's if I have an answer, if I can give myself some kind of an answer, even if it's just temporarily, or I just sit with the idea that maybe I'll do this, then that is enough to let my brain come out of that kind of fight or flight mode and to just logically sit with it. So when I got this news about metastatic spread, we were contemplating the biopsy. And at the beginning of October, I went on a short trip with my family, like my mom and dad, my brother, and my 3 kids. And we went to California, and we just basically just played on the beach, like for days. And there was this kind of pivotal moment. Like I had come there with the mindset and the idea of, I just want some space. Like I want some space for my diagnosis. I want to just forget about this for a little bit. Obviously, I can't forget about it completely. Like I had a few medical appointments to attend online during that week, but let's just live in the moment and let's just not be scared. Yeah. Let's just be present. And so we did. And I just remember there was this point when my kids were just playing in the water, and I was watching them, and that what if was coming up of what if I don't get to see them in 10 years? And almost immediately, my brain came back with, what if you do? And then I latched on to this idea of, okay, I don't know how. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like over the next couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I don't know all of that. I don't know what's the in between. I don't really even know what's the end goal. I can visualize it. I can practice seeing it. And I can have an idea of what my teenage kids look like instead of my 10-year-old, my 7-year-old, and my 4-year-old. But I do know that I'm here today. I also know that I'm going to be here tomorrow. Maybe not 100%, like something could happen, but generally I do believe that I will be here tomorrow. And I also believe that tomorrow's can add up. And that was like, I settled on that. And everything stopped feeling like it was still scary, but it stopped feeling like I was going to cry
Heavy.
every time I looked at my kids. It stopped feeling quite as heavy. And it just felt, okay, I don't have guarantees. I do want to be present, but I do believe that I also believe there's something to this naturopath oncology route, to this holistic idea, to the belief that possibility is there. I don't know what it all looks like. I don't know how to figure it all out today, but I do believe I'm going to be here today, going to be here tomorrow, and the tomorrow's that up. And so every single time that I would feel afraid over the next few months, which was a lot, because I went from here's metastatic diagnosis, here's liver surgery, wake up from liver surgery, go 3 days later to my ocular oncologist, and I was told my eye tumor was growing again. So not only did I just have my liver tumor treated, but now they're telling me, oh, the eye cancer's back. The one thing that can create more problems in your body is now back. And against all belief and perspective on that, like that it shouldn't be back, but it is. And so then I was slated for eye removal surgery, and it was super fast and like just so much crap. It literally just felt like I was just sitting back like, okay. And I just kind of like it maybe wasn't physically what happened, but like in my brain, I'm sitting there like on monotone, like I'm here today, I'll be here tomorrow. Tomorrow's that up. But I mean, like I was exhausted. Like it was so much stuff, like to go from August to December of just nonstop, something else was wrong. And it was really hard sometimes to believe that that mantra that I was repeating to myself was actually possible or true. But it was literally the only thing that I knew for sure. That was
kept keeping you
like
going.
That was the only thing I knew for sure, is that, okay, I am here today. I'm probably going to be here tomorrow, and the tomorrow's add up. That was the only piece of certainty I could give myself in that moment. And so I did. I moved forward. I ended up having my eye removed in an emergency eye removal surgery. It's called enucleation. And it was super hard, but it was also way easier than plaque surgery was, like I talked about at the beginning, where they strap the metal piece to your eye. Like, not fun. A month later, I was in Harry Potter World with my cousin, and I was also 3 months out. Was it 3 months? I guess 3 months from my previous scans, because they felt confident enough in the visualization they did in laparoscopic surgery of the liver to say, like, yeah, we could just do scans in January. Like, let's just plan for that, and we'll start the year fresh. And I was happy to skip the holidays and not have scans over the holidays, because that's one of the worst things, is having scans right around when it's your birthday or holidays or something, because it's already a triggering time. But I ended the month of January with no active cancer, and the ablation site was doing great. And by the end of January, I got word that they were wrong, and my eye tumor was not growing again, but the eye was deteriorating. Like, basically that the white part of the eye, the sclera, was eroding, and it was exposing a hole into the eyeball. And that what we were seeing, there was like a black spot on the front that they thought was like new tumor growth, wasn't actually anything other than necrotic tumor. It was already dead. And so that was a huge relief to find out that, oh, we were wrong. Like, it wasn't growing again. Yay, psych. Like, you went through stressful 2 months for nothing, but whatever, like, you're fine. It's okay. And by February, I was being fit for a prosthetic eye. And by this point, I had started working with someone local. His name is Dr. Rubin, here in Scottsdale. And I felt a million times more in control and just empowered. And I was learning how to implement different things. And as I started this naturopath oncology journey, technically it was October, and then it really, like, I changed doctors and I worked with a new one in December. But like back in October, I remember feeling so overwhelmed, right? I had just gotten metastatic diagnosis. I was still in limbo trying to decide, do I have the liver biopsy? Do I not? Because there's this risk of potential cell spreading and seeding. I don't know. And so while I was in that kind of stuck limbo place, I just remember also looking at this long list of things, long list of supplements and dietary changes and lifestyle changes, which, I mean, I had lived the majority of my last 7 years implementing tons of lifestyle things, like healthy things. Like, I am a generally healthy person. And so to then be told you have all of this stuff you need to change was exceptionally overwhelming. And it was one of those things where I could have looked at it and just stayed overwhelmed and done nothing. But I chose to look at it as I know I can't do it all at once. That's not realistic. That's not feasible. But what I can do is I can pick one thing. I can pick one thing to get really good at. And then when I feel like I'm really good at that, then I can add one more thing. And then I can just layer on top of that. And so that's what I did. And so when people ask me, you do so much, and I'm like, yeah, like I do. Like, it literally consumes my whole life. I work, I'm a mom, and I take care of myself for my cancer journey. And that's it. That's how it goes. But I didn't just start doing all of it all at once. It was not this one day you wake up and you're working out for an hour a day, or you're living a keto lifestyle and your glucose is super stable all the time. No, it was very gradual. And it has taken me the better part of a year to really master where I'm at and to feel confident and empowered. But I just have continued just building on the knowledge that I've had. And I have felt so empowered by just learning from my naturopath oncologist, learning from books, learning from other patients who are doing what I'm doing, learning from my nutritionist that I work with, who's also a patient with this cancer. And it's been just incredibly like validating to what I do as well, to get to this point where I am now, I guess if we're really, really technical about it, like November 18th, I will be 1 year completely cancer-free. It's like insane. And I'm really grateful for where I'm at, but I don't at all chalk it up to luck. Like I 100% believe that all of the different things I have implemented keto, I have done a ton with just managing my glucose. I work out and I do very specific types of exercise that help with glucose management. And I do EBU and ozone therapy, which are oxygenating the blood. I do things that boost my immune system. I take various supplements. I detox my body, like with the sauna. I do cold therapy. Like I do a crap ton of stuff, and I will absolutely own that. But I also believe that combination of those things, and it's an imperfect combination. Let's be totally honest. It's not like I don't have a day here or there where I miss a workout or I forget to do a sauna or whatever it is. It's not at all a perfect system, but it's just that idea that I am doing the things one thing at a time, and also that I'm just trusting. And this was a mindset that I adopted pretty early on last year too, was this idea that, okay, I couldn't do it all, but I could do one thing at a time. And I could believe that one thing would be beneficial, that even if it was small, even if it was tiny, minuscule compared to maybe something else, that one thing, when I like implemented it over time and the compound effect took place, that it would all add up to help. And I 100% believed that. And I couldn't believe everything. And I couldn't quite get to a place of, oh, that's going to be me in 3 years where I'm doing this too. And I'm 3 years in and I'm doing fine. I couldn't quite get there, but I could believe that the one thing I was going to do was going to help. And so it was just scaling that mindset. Okay, I want to have the mindset that this is possible, right? I want to be able to believe that I'll be here in 5 years, but I can't quite get there yet. So like, where's a baby step? And just finding those baby steps. That's where we are today. I still do all those things. I meet with my oncologist. I have tons of blood work. I still have scans every 3 months. My last appointment with my medical oncologist, he's like, so this is great. This is kind of unheard of, but also I don't want to not see you. Like I want to see you every 3 months, at least probably for the next year. It's not to say that we're assuming that it's going to come back. We're just not assuming that it won't.
Just being preventative about it.
Yeah, we're just being as preventative and as proactive as possible. And my naturopath oncologist is of the same mind, but there's just so many different things, like the way that I'm feeling, like my energy levels. We have blood work to compare. We have a methylation test that we do, scans, like all of these things cross-check each other and say, yes, you're still cancer-free. And it's tricky because people are like, well, doesn't that mean you're in remission? And it's like, well, yeah, like technically 1 year in remission, but can you really call it remission if it's still at such a high risk of coming back? We don't know. We don't really know because nobody has been like me. Like all of the people that I know who do something holistic, they still have active disease somewhere, or they have present visible disease in their body. There's some small tumor somewhere. And I have nothing, like, and I'm also not willing to go look in other ways for anything else. I'm like, I'm just gonna believe I have nothing. It's fine. As long as it's not in my liver, which we know, it's fine. And I look back and I've learned more just scientifically, like from the doctors that I work with on my podcast. And I just really believe that I kind of, by accident, it was intentional, but also like I didn't know what I was doing at the time. Like I got my immune system on board, and I believe I'm keeping it on board with all of the things that I am doing. And I just want to, like, just as a general thank you, like to anyone who knows me, like personally. My sister started a GoFundMe last year for me. And between the GoFundMe and just direct donations, family donations, I want to say it was easily 20 grand or more that was raised for our family to be able to give me the space to pursue alternative medicine in a way that it was not an extra financial burden on our little young family. And so that's made a huge difference for us. And so I am so incredibly grateful for that, because it's given us a leg up, and it's given us this year to just dive into that. And for me to not have to worry about extra oncology costs that I wish I didn't have to pay for, but that's just, medical insurance won't pay for those. So,
And so with your birthday, you want wanted to do something special, which I think is amazing. So I want you to talk about it really quick. I'll put the links and everything on the show notes so that anyone that is listening that wants to contribute. So what are you doing for your birthday?
So, like I said, last year, a GoFundMe was started for me, and I had a ton of generosity that was extended toward me and my family. In the last year, I've been able to use that in a very actionable way. And while it would be great for people to continue to donate to my GoFundMe, sure, I'm not going to say no to that, but I would love to see people who listen to this podcast, anybody who hears or comes across my story lately, just pay it forward for the other patients, because I know far too many other young moms like me and other patients who are dealing with this, who they don't have the means or the possibility, they don't have the access to the type of care that I've been able to pursue, or they just don't have that level of belief. They're just not there yet. And they are doing clinical trials, they're doing researched, but still actively being researched kinds of treatments, and they need funding for that. And so I am raising money for A Cure in Sight, which is a nonprofit that benefits patients who need help getting to medical care if needed with their travel, medical bills. But they also help to fund research, actionable research that helps patients who are actively dealing with metastatic disease. And so if you can make a contribution, I just turned 32. So that's been my magic number, is to tell people, hey, donate $32 in my name. And you can add it to the donation link that I will send over that's on my Facebook post, or you can also donate directly to my 5K team, where we're going to be doing a walk for ocular melanoma in Scottsdale, Arizona with my oncologist and my naturopath oncologist, like a bunch of people, lots of family and friends, but we're all coming together November 19th for a 5K in the Scottsdale area. So if you want to come and run or walk with us, then you're more than welcome. But yeah, that's so the gist of it, is that I would love to just see the community of people, strangers, friends, family, like pay it forward to the rest of the ocular melanoma patients who are not as fortunate as I am right now.
I love it. It's so powerful. I've seen it from the stories in because I love how open you've been with all of it. How I truly feel that I got through my cancer, my hysterectomy, my all of those things because the power of the community that has come together to pray for me, to help me through so many things, to help my mindset, like everything has come together. And I've seen that in your story, and it's inspiring, and I'm honored that we got to listen to your story today, and that you made me cry, and it rang so true with so many of the feelings that I had when I was dealing with it on a different level. And it's so I just watching your kids, that got to me so much, because I remember being in that situation of, I'm a single mom of these 3 kids, and what am I going to do? Like, I want to see them grow up, and I'm here, and I've watched them grow up, and having 2 adult children now, it's mind-blowing. And I believe so heavily that is going to be your story as well, that you're going to see your babies grow up and live their lives. And your belief and your fight has been so inspiring to see. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I so appreciate you taking the time to just reach out and ask if I could do this, because I do this with a lot of other patients, like on the I Believe podcast, which if you do want to learn more about ocular melanoma, or if you want to fund the podcast itself directly, then you can listen to the podcast. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, Google, and it's just the Eyes and Eyeball, I Believe podcast. And I host that podcast, and I have patients on to tell their stories, caregivers, like to do this, to tell what happened, how are they dealing with it, what are they doing to cope, what's working for them. And I don't really get the chance to talk about my story very much. So It was nice to be able to do that. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was awesome. I'll also link your podcast on here. So we'll make sure
I'll send you those links.
Yeah. So we'll make sure that everyone is aware. And thank you so much. I am so incredibly happy that you are super close to your 1 year right now as this recording. And I'm so excited to see what comes of this, because I know that this had to have a bigger purpose. And I think that with your story and what you're doing in your own journey, it's going to touch so many people's lives.
Oh, and I guess I'm surprised I didn't talk about it at all. I guess I alluded to it once, but I just have to end with the plug of, so I love Harry Potter, and I have just completely decided I don't have to fight that anymore. I'm just an absolute Harry Potter nerd. If I could live at Harry Potter World like every week or every year, I would go there every year just for 3 or 4 days straight, just for fun, immerse myself in the magic. But that's generally been the idea, is sometimes it has felt like so far off that it's like trying to believe in magic. But the longer that I have done this, the longer that I have seen the results of what I'm doing, and just been able to just continue to lean into that belief and that possibility and that idea that, okay, this is figure outable too, and this is figure outable, and to have a team of people like my medical oncologist, my Reiki healer, my naturopath oncologist, like all of my friends and family, like who are helping and supportive and encouraging, like it all really comes together. And I would also say too that like one of the biggest things that has helped me has been leaning into the work that I do, like with the Akiran site, and how I work for them. I post their social media and create content, but I also host their podcast and their events. And it's been such a rewarding thing to be able to give back to that community of people who are like me and who maybe don't have the resources, or they haven't had the experiences and the mindset coaching and all of the personal development and things that I've been able to have. And so to be able to just sprinkle that in there every now and then and just share that with these people, these patients who are really just like living, in some cases, like their worst nightmare. Yeah. And to be able to help uplift them has been so rewarding and empowering as a patient myself. But it's also given me like such a unique perspective on the disease itself. And just to see, I'm in contact with the pharmaceutical companies, with the researchers, with the doctors. Like I know what's going on. I know all of the research that's happening. I know all of the new projects and the new clinical trials that are coming up, often before even the patients know. And so it just feels very exciting to be able to hold that space of hope in both a belief perspective, but also in like a medical perspective, to see it happening and to see the changes, see the articles, see the research moving forward. Yeah,
it's so crazy how this is life happening for you, right? This is not something that you were like 5 years ago, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah, I'm going to go get eye cancer and have my eye removed. Great. Sounds great. I accept. No, exactly. Nobody chooses this. Nobody chooses this, but you can either fight against it, and you can fight against the fact that it's happening to you, or you can work with it and you can respond, and you can, and I like the word respond better than react, because I think if we're reactive, like sometimes, yes, we're going to be reactive because it's just the nature of this kind of diagnosis. Sometimes you're just reacting in the moment. But I think if you learn to respond and you learn to just sit with whatever is happening, and maybe not ask yourself, why is this happening to me, but asking yourself, what am I going to learn from this? What am I going to do with this? And just really comes down to just changing. Trust is one, but also like changing the questions that you ask. If you ask like, why me? Then yeah, like your brain's going to give you all the reasons why this sucks and why maybe you deserve this, or all the guilt and the shame and all of those things can come up for you. But if you give it a different question, right? If you ask, what's possible from this, or what's possible, how could I figure this out? How could this look different? How could I respond in a way that this is going to feel reasonable or bearable? What belief, what mindset, what's going to help me get through this, instead of looking for all the reasons why it happened to you and all the reasons why it sucks? Find different information. Your brain is so good. Like use that.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it so very much. Thank you again, listeners. Oh my gosh. I think that is just so powerful. That is the one thing that, and I tell Brad all the time, I've heard this from many other mentors, but you drilled this belief into me of life is happening for you and not to you. And I'm going through some things right now that I'm just like, if this is an obstacle that is in my path of where I need to go, then I'm going to trust that it's going to go. It's going to go away. It's going to, and it might not look like the most beneficial thing in the moment, but I'm going to trust that it's exactly what needs to happen, because I've had so much proof of that in my life. In my 40 years, I've had so much proof of it just always will work out. It will, you are strong enough, you are courageous, you're resilient, it will work out. You just can't let it like sink.
And that idea too, that you don't have to see how it's going to work out to trust that it will.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited to maybe talk to you even in another year and see what has come from everything.
Bring it on.
Let's go. Next November, just have it in your calendar.
Block it. It'll be good.
It's going to be another update on this incredible journey and all the people that you've touched along the way, because I think that's, I guess, the benefit of how we met is that we learned to tell our story and to make our story what helps others make changes for themselves.
No, I love that. And that's absolutely been just a huge thing, like a huge thing for what I do, for how I do it, is just that idea that, okay, like my story, me sharing this, me being open and vulnerable about this can help someone else. And it doesn't matter if it only helps one person, that one person still matters. And especially, you know, when it's a 6 in a million, like cancer diagnosis, if there's just 5 other people that I help, like it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so incredible. All right. So listeners, again, go give her some love on her, the donations for her 5K, or, donate directly, because it's going for just such a great cause. And I love that you've picked the 32. I celebrate I'm excited that I turned 40, and I'm excited that I'm about to turn 41, because I didn't think I was 8 years ago. So
like people are like, oh, it's just your birthday. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like a freaking 5-year-old. It's great. I love my birthday.
Exactly. Thank you again. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you have an amazing day. Peace out, guys. Love your life.